Hello. This video is going to focus on component 2, which is the second of the two exams that you're going to do in both first and second year, and it's going to focus on the magazine module that you have to answer basically. Obviously, in the magazine module, there's two magazines that you can get asked about. In the first year, you'll always be asked about Woman's Realm magazine, which we've looked at in class, and we'll cover a little bit about that today. And the second magazine that you only do in second year is this one here, which is Huck Magazine. Today we're going to look at this magazine, have a look at some of the companies that were involved in kind of making it and producing it, have a little look inside of it, talk about some of the theory, and then I'll set you a task at the end to be working on. If you're in my class, don't forget that on the afternoons during the coronavirus outbreak, you guys need to be working on tasks. So if you just send me what you work on through Teams, that would be fantastic. I can have a look over it, answer any questions, and go from there. So the magazine module. How it works is you're given two magazines and you'll be answering questions on both of them in the second year. If you're in the first year, you only answer on Woman's Realm, but it's worth having a little look over it anyway. So Woman's Realm and Huck Magazine, to me, seem like two massively contrasting ideas in terms of how magazines work. Now, there's no requirement for you guys to do comparisons between the two magazines in your exams, but for me, when we analyse it in class, it makes a little bit of sense to kind of look at both of them as comparison text, just because sometimes it lets you kind of unlock things in the magazine that you wouldn't see if you weren't doing comparison tasks anyway. So if we look at Woman's Realm started in 1958. And the episode that we look at was first published between the 6th and the 13th of February 1965, I believe it was. So this means two things. Firstly, it's a Valentine's Day special, or the lead up to Valentine's Day. And secondly, what that means is that it's from the 1960s. So ideas around feminism hadn't really kind of evolved to where they have today. So as far as we're concerned, there's been three major steps in feminism that have been completed, and there's arguments to suggest that we're currently going through a fourth wave of feminism now. So first wave feminism was around the turn of the century, so around the 1900s, late 1800s, and it was generally about women kind of fighting for the vote. Before that time, women weren't allowed to vote in general elections or local elections or anything like that. And so women quite understandably felt that that wasn't right. So we had movements like the women's suffrage movement, who fought for women to basically be able to do votes. Second wave feminism is what we're going to kind of have a quick look at, and second wave feminism was around the time of the 1960s, and this is generally women have had the right to vote given to them, and now basically what they're doing is now they're fighting for the right for kind of jobs and stuff like that, a bit more recognition in society, a bit more equality. Third wave feminism kicked in around the 90s. For those of us who know who the Spice Girls are, they're generally cited as kind of like inciting a lot of third wave feminism. So this is like the idea of girl power, and women kind of not just achieving jobs, now they're achieving power as well, power and control. And there's argument to suggest that we've moved into fourth wave feminism. Now, fourth wave feminism, please, if you're a radical feminist, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't crucify me on this one. But I believe a lot of fourth wave feminism is in relation to kind of like the movement of beyond binary genders, an exploration of gender as a construct and that kind of thing. Now, in our class, we look at that quite a lot anyway, and we've explored these ideas, particularly when we've looked at theorists like Gauntlet and Butler, but that's generally what it's about. So as it's second wave feminism, Woman's Realm is very much kind of focused on the idea that gender wasn't quite where it is today. And we only really need to look at the front cover of our edition of Woman's Realm in order to see that in action. So on the front cover, we have a young lady who looks like she's just hiding a secret from us, basically. And down the side, there are several cover lines that outline exactly what a woman's realm is. So the magazine basically states that Women's Realm is both the home and the world of the domestic, which should, if you're in my class, be ringing some bells in terms of theory. So I've drawn this picture. Van Zunen, if you're watching, I'm sorry, here we go. So there's our picture. I've just realised that the picture of Van Zunen actually just looks quite a lot like me, to be honest with you. I don't think I've done it justice there. But there we go. That's my picture of Lisbeth Van Zunen, and that's an overview of what her theory generally is. So one of the sound bites that we look at in the in both the first year and the second year of media studies is that Van Zunen says that a lot of times in our media we see women belonging to the world of home and the domestic, and men belong to the world of work and politics. Glasses don't even join up in the middle. So basically what that means is if we look at our front cover of Woman's Realm, we can actually see this in action, really. So the cover of Woman's Realm. Am I going to draw the cover of Woman's Realm? I'm not really proud of this picture, to be honest with you. It looks like she's got a giant ear on the side of her head. So, feel free to Google it, but I think we can all agree this is more or less an exact replica of how it looks. So on it we've got our front cover, woman there, Woman's Realm, and we can see the cover lines on the side there that basically outline what a Woman's Realm is all about. So the cover lines basically include stuff like 48 pages of soft furnishings. So that's literally 48 pages about cushions and how you can make cushions for your house. Imagine how much free time you'd have to have on your hands in order to do that. So yeah, these ladies didn't have jobs. The target audience for this didn't have jobs. And it includes things like wonderful children's raincoats, not just any old children's raincoats, wonderful ones that again you can make yourself. The language of flowers, that says there. I have no idea what that's about. The language of flowers. So learning what flowers are saying to you, I guess. Either way, it's very I guess romantic in a way, I don't know. And finally, there's an exciting new period romance at the bottom there, which we are lucky enough to get to study a little bit about that and read through some of it. So all of this stuff, I'm going to put that nightmare away. She literally looks like Marge Simpson. Actually, no, that's not fair on Marge Simpson. But all of that stuff there basically says that women are very like homemakers and very much belong to the world of home and the domestic, whereas the men are going to be out of work. If you can find the time to read through, not only just read through 48 pages of soft furnishings and find the time to make it, that implies that you're not really working much of a job and that your husband is surely paying for everything. So that's where Woman's Realm is. Now that's 1965, and as we know, in 1965 the world was not where it is now. Completely different world, more conservative, more traditionalist, more awful ideas in a lot of sense. So in 1965 it was still illegal in some states in America for white and black people to marry each other. The Abortion Act hadn't been introduced in this country yet, making getting abortions difficult and illegal in some senses. So it was a different world they lived in. Now Huck, and this kind of brings us to where we're at now, Huck Magazine is taken from 2016, and if you think about where we are with gender now, it's a completely different spectrum. Now I know in my classes there's been a lot of debate when we've discussed a lot of this, because this contains a lot of new ideas like the idea of non-binary, the idea of more than two genders, and some people believe in that mantra, some people believe there are only two genders. The nice thing about media studies, which I always tell my students, is that it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. What matters is that you understand that some people believe it, and that we have to take that into consideration when we're doing media studies. So Huck Magazine started life as a surf and skate magazine, and it was from it was made by a company, or it is made by a company called TCO London, which stands for the Church of London. What I would do is pause this video and have a look at their website and have a look at how nice their website is. And we're back. So TCO London is a company that formed in 2006, and it's a new type of media company basically. They have some of their own content, so they both write and pay for and print Huck Magazine. They also have a website and magazine called Little White Lies, which looks at film. But what they also do is they make a lot of content for other people. So they've made adverts and videos for companies like Facebook and Nike and WeTransfer and a load of like cool brands. I don't really want to use the word cool, but they do they work with a lot of cool companies basically is what they do. It's a very modern company. It's a very new way of working. They operate across a range of different cultural industries. And the interesting thing about their website, if you have a look at their website, is they say that Huck is not just a magazine, they call it like an entertainment brand, basically, because it is not just a magazine. So if you'll just bear with me, I can show you exactly what David Hesmanhauser looks like. Again, David, if you're watching, I don't mean any offence by this. I don't know why you look so angry already. Alright, I made Hesmanhauser look like a maniac. Oh my god! That is not even a little bit what he looks like. I'm not even sure I can show this on camera because David Hesmanhauser only works a little bit away from where I work. Because I think he works for the University of Leeds. He does work for the University of Leeds. And he looks nothing like this. I've made him look like a super villain. So if you are watching David, I am sorry. This is not how you look in the slightest. But I've done it now and I've recorded it. I'm not going to re-record it. He doesn't look this angry at all. But there's my picture of Hesmanhauser. So sorry, David, if you're watching, I'm so sorry. The important part, though, is that we're covering some of your theory there. Can I get all that in? We're covering some of your theory. So, what Hesmanhauser says is that companies now operate across a range of cultural industries, which means that Huck is much bigger than just a magazine. It is an entertainment brand, basically. So you can go away and you can Google and have a look at these things. But Huck Magazine contains, that picture's awful, it consists of a Facebook page, an Instagram and a Twitter. You can go and subscribe to them, and I would recommend that you follow or like each of them pages in the lead up to your exam anyway. It is a YouTube channel, and to be fair, Huck has an amazing YouTube channel. It should do, because the Church of London is a media production company as well, and they produce some beautiful videos, and we'll have a look at some of them further down the line. It is the physical magazine as well, and it's a website. So Huck is an overall entertainment brand because it operates across a range of cultural industries. So, if we look at what Huck is about, it is a magazine that generally targets explorer or reformer audiences. When we look at like psychographics and we look at the work of Jung and Rubicon, Huck Magazine is very much an alternate take on things, and it's a magazine that started life as a skate and surf kind of magazine. Now, if you think about kind of skate and surf mentalities, you should be able to work out really why you would be targeting explorer and reformer audiences. Skate and surf lifestyle generally go against kind of mainstream ideas, and they will often be seen as kind of out there activities. There's a reason both them things are called extreme sports, because they're generally kind of the extreme version of sports. It's not football, for example. It's not rugby or anything like that. It's skating and surfing. And there's a whole lifestyle attached to this, a whole ideology. Things like punk rock are tied in really close to that, and that has a massive explorer or reformer audience as well. It makes sense as to why the magazine might go against popular opinion so much. Now, the slogan for Huck Magazine is "Paddle against the flow." Now, if you think about what that actually means, it means go against popular opinion, or in my opinion, that's what it means. It means push against kind of popular understanding of the time. Not only that, but this issue is the defiance issue, which means that it focuses on people standing up or standing against a lot of mainstream ideas. If we flip through it, that was a good flip through. There's a whole section called Beyond Binary that focuses on people pushing beyond popular understanding of what gender is. So this is Arabia Felix. Arabia Felix is a gay man who's also a drag queen and looks like this. And the whole article there is about how in his home country of Kuwait he would have been executed for that kind of opinion and this kind of behaviour. This is Jacob Tobiah. There's some videos of Jacob kind of explaining his gender online, and he says that he is genderqueer. I keep saying he doesn't go by he goes by them or they, so has different pronouns and stuff, quite clearly going against the flow of what traditional masculinity or traditional femininity would be. The article we're going to focus on today is this one that is on the cover here. So it focuses on a group of people called the YPJ. Now this is where it gets really complicated. So you're going to need to stop this video, and I'm going to post a link that I need you to watch, basically. I'll put it in the description, and or I'll do one of them weird pop-up things so that you can click the link. Anyway, it should be below, and the link will take you to an overview of a group called the PKK and the YPJ. Okay, so we should be back. Complicated, really, really complicated, very difficult to understand. But the basic premise of it is this. There is a group called the PKK who've existed around the Middle East for a long time. Now, we're all aware of a group called ISIS, unfortunately, and ISIS were generally, they're not as big as they used to be, but they were a huge thing at one point. They were trying to set up an Islamic state. So what they were doing was imposing strict kind of laws that they'd interpreted, and they were generally just seen as like the bad guys of the world for a long time. In this part of the world, we saw them as the bad guys of the world, obviously. We looked at them as terrorists, that kind of thing. Obviously, if you were in ISIS, then you would have a different opinion. But I can't imagine that this video is being viewed by many ISIS members. No, I hope not. I hope it isn't anyway. They were generally seen as bad guys, right? Now, the PKK have existed for a long time, and what's interesting about the PKK is that they fought back against ISIS. When ISIS started to take over whole areas of the Middle East, particularly Syria, the PKK fought against it. Now, the PKK has a whole section of it dedicated just to women. It's like the women's army of the PKK, and they're called the YPJ. Now, them two names being so kind of closely related is where part of this complication comes from, and what makes this whole thing so complicated to kind of have an awareness of. But the PKK and the YPJ fought against ISIS and took control. Generally beat ISIS in their fight, and then they took control of the regions, and this is where it gets complicated. So the UK and the US and Germany and France and the United Nations all consider the PKK and the YPJ to be a terrorist organisation themselves. Just because you've got two terrorist organisations fighting against each other, so we've got ISIS fighting against the YPJ and the YPJ winning over ISIS, doesn't mean that these guys aren't terrorists at the end of the day, according to like where our country stands on this whole thing. Now, Huck Magazine takes an interesting approach to this, because Huck Magazine calls these ladies heroes. Now, this is complicated, but it's not too difficult to understand, because if we look at the article of the Huck, if we look at the Huck article, they kind of avoid the whole terrorist perspective and go more for like a feminist perspective on this whole thing. Yes, this is a lady. Yes, she's absolutely powerful. Yes, she is fighting against ISIS, but in the eyes of the UN and in the eyes of the UK and Germany and the US and Israel and a load of different countries, these guys are the bad guys. So our article looks like this, basically. It starts out, it's called Ocalan's Angels, that's what it's called. Now, the group, the guy who set up the PKK is a guy called Abdullah Ocalan, and he went to jail basically for his part in setting up the PKK. Now, Ocalan's Angels, as we know, is a referential code. Am I going to draw Roland Barthes? I'm going to draw Roland Barthes. Be right back. Right, now I feel even more like Hesmanhalge is going to come and get me, because the picture of Barthes is so much better than the picture of Hesmanhalge was. I'm really sorry, David. Also, Lisbeth, if you're watching this, don't come get me. I'm really sorry. As you guys know, Barthes is my hero. Maybe that's why I drew like an even nicer picture of him there. But Barthes is responsible for, I would say, a good 50% of everything we do in media studies, particularly in my class. So he's responsible for semiology, as we know, but he's also responsible for 5 narrative codes. So as we can see, they're all listed here. We have hermeneutic codes, which are questions the audience want to find the answers to. We have proeretic codes, which are kind of like a clue that the audience gets that tells them about something that's going to go on later on in the episode, or the text, or whatever it is you're looking at. And then we have this one here, which is referential and cultural codes. I'm not going to cover symbolic and semic codes, they're not too important right now, but referential and cultural codes are the ones that's important to us, because if we look back at Huck Magazine, bear with me, look back at Huck Magazine, Ocalan's Angels is a reference to a old TV program that then became 3 films after that, called Charlie's Angels. Now, Charlie's Angels were basically 3 spies who operated under a guy called Charlie, and went around being heroes. They were basically superheroes without superpowers, and that's what Charlie's Angels were. Now, saying that these ladies are Ocalan's Angels straight away tells us Huck's take on their representation. It's saying that these ladies are heroes. Bear in mind, the UN, the UK, the US, Germany, France, most of the world believes that these ladies are terrorists. You also need to bear in mind that Huck Magazine has stated you also need to remember that Huck Magazine has a slogan, paddle against the flow, go against popular opinion. This might be why it's doing this kind of representation. Now, my task for you guys is to access the imagery that we can see in the article here. I want you to access the article on Teams and have a look at how these women are being represented in a positive light. So that is your task right now. So go away, have a look at Teams, and have a look through the article and try and make a list of all the ways the media language is making these ladies look like they are heroes. So once you've done that, we're going to try and recap this ourselves. So if we look at them, it's constructed in a number of different ways. The captions that are being used in the whole article are very kind of... So if we have a look at the article, things like selection and combination are really important to us right now. So remember, they'll have taken thousands of pictures for this article and picked the ones that best fit their narrative. So having a picture of these ladies on a billboard, for example, kind of positions them as movie stars. It represents them as being heroes and being like the good guys, really. If we scroll through further, we have the use of things like pull quotes. And here we go. This is an interesting pull quote where it says, "I wanted to let them all know their worst nightmare had come true. Their friend had been killed by a woman." Now that is Huck Magazine, in my opinion, making this out to be more of a feminist issue than it is a terrorist issue. In this case, feminism is trumping terrorism in terms of how Huck is looking at these girls here. Yes, they're killing ISIS. I absolutely agree with that. But Huck has decided to position the whole process through the YPJ and make killing ISIS a feminist issue. If we continue on, I mean, just going back to the cover, we can see that the semiology being used makes this lady look very defiant, very powerful. We have a very strong gesture code there, very strong use of costume, strong use of mise-en-scène, her stood on top of a mountain, all makes her look super powerful and super important. Continuing on through, we have images of sisterhood throughout the whole thing. Interesting representations there where we see women as both soldiers and as warriors, but also as like sisters. We can see there's a lot of kind of compassion between them there. And the ones who've died, we generally see them as martyrs. So it makes reference to a lady called Sissik Derrick quite a lot throughout the article here, as she's a YPJ fighter who died, and she's often referred to as a martyr in the article. So the copy itself, the lexical choices within the copy, are suggesting that these ladies, again, are heroes. Now, in terms of how we can use this in our exam, it says a lot about both the target audience and it says a lot about, it opens us up to discuss theory quite a lot. We've already talked about Van Zunen. This is clearly challenging the work of Van Zunen there. I'm not going to draw her again because she'll find out where I live and she'll kill me. But it's clearly challenging the work of Van Zunen by saying that these women don't belong to the home, they don't belong to the world of the domestic, they are in fact involved in politics. So remember, politics is a broad term. It doesn't necessarily mean that you sit in Parliament and leech off people's taxes and make decisions for the rest of us. What it means is that you're involved in making decisions. That's what politics is. Now, whether you do that with a vote or whether you do that with a AK-47, you are still involved in politics here. So these women are challenging the work of Van Zunen. Now, discussions around challenging theory are important to us in second year because it's important for us to evaluate theory, basically, and we have to be able to evaluate the work of the theorist being done. In second year, it's not just saying, oh, this is what this theorist says. In second year, it's saying, this is what this theorist says. I'm going to measure and evaluate how well that applies. So that's a good approach to take. Secondly, and I'm not going to draw because just my drawings are awful, but this is also interesting to look at through the work of Judith Butler, who says that gender is a performance. Now, if we just take that soundbite, that gender is a performance, we can see that these ladies are not really performing to traditional representations of what women are. If we look at traditional representations of women, so that's the kind of thing we see in women's realm, we see that women are homemakers and women are domesticated and that women care for kids and that kind of thing. This magazine shows them as freedom fighters and as people who are fighting for their own and dying for their own cause, whether you believe that cause is a good cause or not. Well, yeah, fighting ISIS is a good cause, obviously, but it shows them not performing to their gender, basically, is what it's trying to say there. And finally, hooks. So Bell Hooks, again, I'm not going to draw that lady because I know she'll find out where I live and come and get me. But Bell Hooks says, from the EDUQAS media perspective, one of the things that Bell Hooks says is that feminism is the struggle to end patriarchy. Now, we know what a patriarchy is. It's where men are in control of everything. And feminism is the struggle to end that, is kind of the soundbite that we take from Bell Hooks. Again, I'll go back to this pull quote. I wanted to let them all know that their worst nightmare had come true, that their friend had been killed by a woman. Now, that's straight away, I mean, one of the worst things that could happen to you is to be killed, surely, right? But killed by a woman, that somehow makes it worse to whoever they've killed, to an ISIS fighter. That suggests that ISIS are not particularly forward with feminism. I can't believe I've just said that. Of course they're not, it's ISIS. But it says that they're not particularly forward thinking with feminism. If that's the case, what this is showing is women struggling against a patriarchal control, a patriarchal system. So we're going to leave it there because actually we've covered quite a lot there already. Now, what I want you to do for your task, actually I'll draw it up on my board. This is why my board should be used, not to draw theorists and offend my colleagues in universities. Ta-da! Right, so there's your task for the day. So using an answer grid, if you're in one of my classes, you know what an answer grid is. We've done them before. If you're not sure, ask me over Teams. I want you to explore the representations that are being, explore how the representations are being constructed in the Ocalan's Angels article and the front cover of Huck Magazine. You need to know that all of the resources that you need are on Teams. Take your picture now of the task. I'll pause while you take a picture of this or screenshot it. Good. So that's what I want you to do, basically. And when you've done it, let's see if you can get like 6 of the different grid answers kind of put in there. Remember, I'm not expecting you to write full answers. I just want you to basically plot them out using the grid. There should be a different theorist in each box wherever possible, or failing that, a different use of media language each time. If you find it difficult, then please just send me a message and I can video chat you basically and try and explain it a little bit better to you. We don't even have to video chat. I can just kind of type back to you if you need me to. Okay, I know it's difficult. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, or if not, at least I hope you've made notes on it. I hope you found it useful. Feel free to go back over it. Stay safe out there, everyone.